I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Venezuela.
Thank you. President, draft resolution L27 on the situation of human rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran, an initiative that is not constructive. It is presented at a time when Irani policy based on cooperation with the other countries of the world has promoted historic successes of its diplomacy, opening up new horizons for mutual respect. The Islamic Republic of Iran is committed to the right of its people to enjoy and define their fate, organize free parliamentary elections. They were also democratic elections with their assembly of experts. This was one of the most salient items is that of the women occupying seats in the parliament. As with Venezuela, Iran believes in the firm need to respect and promote all human rights on equal footing, having taken on a constructive focus internally and as well on the international front. It has shown that it is actively committed to the process of the UPR and is implementing the recommendations accepted in its last review. The UPR is the mechanism that has been the most effective tool and universal tool in the promotion and protection of all human rights. President Venezuela is convinced of the need to abandon political motivations that are biased and unfair and that are unfortunately maintained by the authors of this draft resolution and that have called for the extension of the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on Iran. These efforts should be substituted by greater awareness vis-à-vis the global threat of terrorism and violence, which requires a global coalition of efforts of all countries against this scourge. We are surprised that despite constructive commitments that have been shown, Iran continues to be subjected to persecution from some countries that have chosen the path of total indifference to the new international climate, maintaining their obsolete political agenda. That is not conducive to constructive dialogue in this council. Hence, President Venezuela is opposed to this draft resolution L27, and we call for it to not be considered by this council. For this reason, we request a motion for non-action on this. We call upon the members of the Council to support this request for a motion of non-action. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you. Just as pointed out by the distinguished representative from the Russian Federation, when the delegation of the Venezuelan delegation was taking the floor, we were the first to raise our flag. And we're very glad that the Russian delegation concedes the floor to us first. Mr. President, the Chinese delegation supports the motion asked by the Venezuelan delegation. That is to say, we take no action motion with regard to L27. China is not against discussing human rights issues of any countries in the Human Rights Council. We have always actively supported the human rights dialogue and cooperation through UPR on the basis of equality, mutual respect of all countries. What we are opposed is that some countries politicize human rights questions. They opt for the practice of selectivity and double standards. China is of the view L27 is a typical manifestation of the above erroneous practice. It has nothing to do with the objective of promoting and protecting human rights of the Human Rights Council. Therefore, the Chinese delegation supports the motion proposed by the delegation of Venezuela. We call upon all the other members to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. To add to what has been said by distinguished representatives of the People's Republic of China and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, we would like to say the following. The consideration of Iran in the Human Rights Council has shown itself to be counterproductive and ineffective. We always took the view that issues of promotion and protection of human rights, including in separate countries, should be considered as constructive cooperation. And unfortunately, in the case of Iran, we have not seen this. So the Russian Federation supports the proposal for a no-action motion on this resolution, and that this debate be adjourned on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iran.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Distinguished colleagues, the government of Islamic Republic of Iran firmly believes in the need to respect and promote human rights, and as such has adopted a constructive approach internally and externally. The Charter of the Citizen Rights was one of the first initiatives taken by the President Rouhani. The Charter is based on the innovative process that will increase the participation and consultation of the people. Iran also seriously starts to resume meaningful discussion on many facets and theories of the human rights in bilateral, multilateral levels and area of education and training. In addition, we are actively engaged with the process of UPR and have fulfilled our obligations because we believe that the UPR mechanism is the most appropriate and universal tool for the promotion and protection of human rights for all. In addition, the Islamic Republic of Iran, believing in the right of the people to freely decide their destiny, organized free and democratic parliamentary elections and the Assembly of Experts, February 26, 2016, with the participation of 62% registered voters. One of the most striking achievements of this election was the increase in the seats held by women in parliament. Mr. President, every distinguished representative here is well cognizant that the draft resolution is not about human rights aims, but an abuse of the integrity and procedure of this august body for narrow political purposes. This is unconstructive resolution filed at a time when the policy based on constructive cooperation of Iran with the world has promoted the historic success of diplomacy and reason and opened new horizon for cooperation built on dialogue, understanding and mutual respect. This is really problematic to argue that the leading organization of the international human rights has lost sight of its own values and disproportionately focused on the situation in the Islamic Republic of Iran to further the political goals of certain countries. There is a tragic opportunity cost in how the UN human rights mechanism set its priorities and allocate resources in appointing the special rapporteur for the human rights situation in Iran, which also damages the credibility of the Council, its perspective and cause of human rights. Such an approach would lead to the parallelism which could not contribute to the culture of dialogue, the apparent need of our time for which HRC is established. Mr. President, at present we are facing the strain of violent extremism which pose serious stress to the very foundation of human rights and to the fabric of communities worldwide. In this regard, we need to abandon the bias and unjust political efforts that merely extend the differences that were unfortunately made by the authors of the resolution in the direction of the extension of mandate of special rapporteur on Iran and replacing them with the heightened awareness of the global threat posed by the extremism and violence and organize a global coalition against them. We reiterate our genuine intention to conduct constructive cooperation with the UN Human Rights Mechanism, including HRC, thematic mandate holders, and have continuously reported to relevant territory bodies and found itself legally bound to implement its international obligations. Hence, considering the premises that says us the issue of human rights should not be politicized, but should be discussed seriously and as an objective, and in the view of the fact that the draft resolution against my country is going along with partiality and non-objectivity approach, I hope that distinguished members of HRC choose the right path by saying no to this draft resolution. Thank you.
I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba.
Thank you, President. The existence of the Special Rapporteur on Iran is a clear example of the discriminatory and politicized practices, as well as the double standards in the most true style of the now gone Commission on Human Rights. Those promoting this resolution are not at all concerned with the proposals of the government to bring about a direct dialogue and deepen their cooperation in human rights. Cuba reaffirms its clear and firm principled position against country mandates and selective mandates against countries of the South. They do not contribute to a climate of cooperation or dialogue, which are so very essential and necessary in the context of the Human Rights Council's work. In our opinion, human rights are not the true motivation for addressing Iran in this council. We reiterate that it is only through a focus or approach of cooperation dialogue that this body can be effective in its work of protecting and promoting all human rights. To this end, it is essential that all efforts be accompanied by the ownership of the country in question. The UPR is the ideal mechanism for analyzing the human rights situation in all countries. The mandates that are imposed without consent are destined to fail, as has been seen in the recent past. For all of these reasons, Cuba requests that this draft resolution be put to a vote, and Cuba will vote against it. Allow me to conclude confirming our support for the government and people of Iran, encouraging them to continue with their work in the promotion and protection of all human rights, as well as in the enjoyment of their right to self-determination. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Venezuela.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, President. We would like to insist that the grounds for L27, which impose a mandate of a special rapporteur in Iran, do not allow for genuine dialogue or cooperation. Initiatives such as this dilute the credibility of this council. This is an instrument that promotes geopolitical interests and confrontation. They are wanting in objectivity. This practice is undesirable, inconsistent, and illegitimate. It represents the manipulation of certain powers that insist on using these multilateral venues to maintain their policies of aggression and hostility against sovereign countries. President Venezuela opposes the selective practice of presenting such resolutions that violate the principles of a respect for sovereignty and non-interference in the domestic affairs of states, and even more so when they do not have the consent of the concerned country. We reject the draft resolution, L27, and we will vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of China.
Mr. President, China has always advocated that human rights issues should be addressed through constructive dialogue and cooperation. We are against the practices of country-specific resolutions, the politicization of human rights issues, or even using human rights as geopolitical tool to achieve selfish gains. China calls upon relevant countries to recognize the efforts made by Iran in the promotion and protection of human rights and stop openly exerting pressure and come back to the track of dialogue so as to play a constructive role to safeguard regional safety and to promote the development of human rights causes. Resolution L27 runs counter to the above principles. It is not constructive. Therefore, China will vote against this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Russian delegation does not support the draft resolution on the situation of human rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran. We have already said that we find this initiative politicized and that it does not meet the true objectives of international cooperation on human rights. Once again, I will say that Russia takes a position of principle against the submission for consideration by the Council of critical country resolutions. In our view, the existing UPR procedure within the Human Rights Council is the correct format for discussion of such questions. We welcome the measures taken by Tehran to improve the human rights situation. First of all, in the social and economic spheres, we note the constructive attitude of Iran to cooperation with the Council and its mechanisms, as well as OHCHR, as demonstrated several times in practice. We believe that extension of the mandate of the special procedure on the situation of human rights in Iran is not necessary. This is a costly and ineffective mechanism. In that connection, we support the call by previous delegations to put the draft resolution on the situation of human rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran to the vote, and we will vote against it. We call on all states interested in the constructive and depoliticized nature of activities in the Human Rights Council to do the same. Thank you.
I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Algeria.
Thank you. As many speakers have said, this draft resolution is politicized. Another proof of the instrumentalization of the Council to attack certain countries. The draft resolution does not take account of the developments within Iran over recent months, and these internal and external events should have led the Council to put an end to this mechanism. Thus, my country will vote against the draft resolution. Thank you.